You're not responsible. It was wrong. Reach out to me. We'll connect you.
I will never see, speak, or hear from Aaron Smith-Levin for the rest of my life.
I've been raised since the age of 4 to follow orders, do as I was told, or risk losing everything.
If we speak out, that's the only way they're going to get the strength to have the courage to do the same.
Why the hell does someone have to escape to get out of a religion?
I'm still shocked by the evil. This is pure evil at work.
Welcome to another Come Get Some Extra Scientology edition today with Aaron Smith-Levin. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about WISE organizations and what that is. And before we do that, a little housekeeping. Again, this is Miami Six Man on Twitter. You can follow the show on @CGS here on Twitter. Of course, there is a Come Get Some on Facebook. And you can email the show using cgshere@gmail.com. Please, by all means, show me what I'm doing isn't falling on deaf ears. Subscribe to the show, whether it's on iTunes or on Blog Talk Radio, whatever. I know Blog Talk makes you jolt to a few hoots, but it's not damaging or hurtful in any way. So let's do this. World Institute of Scientology Enterprises, that's a WISE company, and just taken straight off a wiki, why not, is a Church of Scientology organization headquartered in Los Angeles, California. Basically, it's the international membership organization whose members use both L. Ron Hubbard management technology and embrace the responsibilities and ethical standards of a WISE membership. Essentially, they raise money for Scientology within the company. A portion of that happens that way, but also they ask and want their employees to basically sign into Scientology and take Scientology courses, if I'm not mistaken. Through the years, there's been a lot of cases brought up against Scientology who have WISE companies, such as in 1992, there was some assistance to a dentist in Canton, Ohio. They were continually against their will, being subjected to religious recruitment, and they tried to brainwash them, they said. In 1994, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, there was a dental care lawsuit. Basically, they wouldn't join the Church of Scientology, so they got fired. And this goes on. There's one in 98, 2002, 2003, 2005. Some of these don't have resolutions to them posted. Sometimes they backed out because the charges against them were too heavy. Also, there was a dental assistant in the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries that sued for religious discrimination. And in 2012, she received a payment over $300,000 in settlement. So you can win. You can win in these battles. And these battles have to happen is really a sickness. It's really disturbing to me just how integrated Scientology has come into every part of the world, just seeping in like cancer cells. And I want to make a statement right now because normally I don't have the luxury of believing there might be somebody who identifies as Scientology as a Scientologist in their practices listening to the show. But I have a sneaky suspicion there's at least one person in Scientology listening to this show today, and I want to speak to you. All this is my opinion based on what I'm seeing and what I've been able to assert from connecting the dots and hearing everybody's stories and seeing everything I've seen. My question to you is, if this is your path to enlightenment, to clear the planet, why is it okay to destroy people along the way? How is that making you a better person? Does the ends really justify the means that much? I don't know how you're going to feel about hearing that or how you're going to receive that. I'm probably speaking on deaf ears because you've already bought into it. And what you bought into is a bad bill of sale, and you should really look at getting let's really look at that again, because you, even regardless of what you're doing to other people, which I know of you, if you're who I think you are listening, you probably deserve better yourself. Here is part one of Aaron Smith-Levin. All right, today on the show, you may have seen this man on the Leah Remini show, Scientology, The Aftermath, and
He's the gentleman with the who lost his twin brother after Disconnection, and it was a very emotional episode for me, probably one of the most emotional episodes. But he's here to talk to us now on Come Get Some. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hey, thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on, and I think it's great that people like yourself and Tony Ortega and Chris Shelton and more have agreed to come on this show because. A lot of people are going to know you mostly from your spot on the Lair Remini show, and people have ideas about TV shows, and you wonder about the production of it and everything. Of course, after your time on the show, and everybody else who's come on the show, these smear videos come out by Scientology about how terrible you guys are as people, and one of the main things, like this gentleman, John Alex Wood, I call him a gentleman, he's not, but John Alex Wood out on Twitter saying stuff like, Amy Scobie lies, so she couldn't have been molested, and, you're a bad person, and Chris is a bad person, and Leah's after cash, and it made me want to create this show. But what I think is great about it is he's sitting there saying that this is all an act, this is all scripted, heavily scripted. And the fact is, this is your life. This is your life. So what happens is people see Lear Remini fire up, they see his comments, and I worry somebody might see the shadowy silhouette on A&E of Aaron Smith-Levin looking into the distance and going, yeah, man, this is scripted. But no, that's television. But
I know, those things those things are a little teasy, But even if you watch a news program, they shoot, cheesy B-roll like that.
Well, right, it's still television.
Yeah, exactly.
But the story is the story. There's no, and I tell you, the way they did it, I will say, Mary Khan's story is extremely emotional, and then watching her son speak against her makes me want to put my fist through the screen. And the Amy Scobie thing is terrible, and Paulette Cooper went through hell. And something about your story, and I think it was kind of the way it was laid out and edited on TV, not to mention that it's just really an emotional story, your story got me almost the most, I think. And we're going to get into that if we can here. One thing that threw me off, and I want to talk about this, and I mentioned it before we went on the air, when the show starts, when you're on Lear Remini, and I don't want to go through the minutes of the show, but when the show starts, they talk about how Heather won't come on camera and talk. And there's apparently some reason for it, yet later on it's explained that she's been disconnected from her parents. So what exactly was the reason, if I can ask you, that Heather wasn't willing to be on camera?
Sure. Well, if I recall correctly, what was said in the show is that she's worried that if she appears on camera, that will be used to prove to her parents that she really is an SP, right? And so that is totally accurate. When my wife Heather got declared, she was guilty of nothing other than continuing to be married to me. She had never met with Mike Rinder the way I had already met with Mike Rinder. She had never read any of the online blogs the way I had read the blogs. She had never had to lie to the ethics officer the way I had lied to the ethics officer. And I don't mind saying this, I think if my wife had it her way, and if she were able to still keep her family, keep her mother, keep her father, keep her sisters and brother, and keep her marriage to me, and keep our kids together, she would probably rather still be in Scientology. You know what I mean? Like, what she objects to is that she was forced to decide. That's right. What she objects to. But she also still has a loyalty, I think, to the subject, a loyalty to L. Ron Hubbard, and would probably like to do auditing, And you can do auditing outside of the church, but when you're raised in the church, you are taught to believe that getting auditing outside the church is like the ultimate sin. And so I think I'm giving a very long answer here, but what the short version of this answer is, she wants, at least up until this point, I think it's starting to change, she wants to be able to hold on to that integrity of saying, I have not done anything wrong other than insist on my right to continue to be married to my husband. And I think, and she was declared for it anyway. And I think in her mind, if she goes and does things that she knows the church could consider a suppressive act, then it will prove to everyone in the church that they were right when they made the right decision when they declared her. She wants to be able to go through life on a day-to-day basis saying, no, it was not right that you declared me. I'm not who you say I am. And she just doesn't, these things, this way that I'm explaining it, I'm just explaining it the way it exists. It's not something I agree with. It is something I have a problem with.
Right.
It's something that Heather and I have argued about. Like, look, you can't keep living your life worried about what people think about you who don't give a shit about you right? Like, you were taught to think that way for a reason, and it was to control you. And if you're still living your life, if you're still trying to live your life in a way that you think other people would agree with, then they're still controlling you. And decompressing has been much harder and has taken much longer for her than it has for me. I think that's the best way I can explain it. So, did she have a problem with Leah coming to the house? No. Did she have a problem with me doing the show? No. Did she have a problem with the kids appearing on camera? No. But was she willing to sign the form that said the kids could appear on camera? No. Because she says, look, if you have to ask me, don't do it. Like, if Aaron's signature is enough for them to appear on camera, then have them appear on camera. But I don't want my signature on a piece of paper because this isn't my thing. This is, you know what I mean? Like, she's like,
right.
I'm okay with this happening, but I don't want to give my permission. I'm okay, but don't ask for my permission. And so honestly, that's why she didn't want to appear on camera, because then her parents, she is very, very, very optimistic that she will be able to have a relationship with her parents again in the future. And I tell her, I said, look, that's going to happen the day your parents leave the church. You trying to live your life and be a good girl and not break any of Scientology's rules is not what's going to enable you to see your parents again. It's going to be when your parents leave the church. And she doesn't even disagree with that statement. It's just hard for her to internalize it and adopt it and live with it. So that's the answer.
Wow, there's a lot to analyze about that answer, but I don't want to do anything that will. I don't want to say or embark on a conversation that could make her more and more uncomfortable. I will say this, and this is not a judgment on her at all. And I try to keep away from some of the curse words on this show, although you can curse. I was going to say this flat out, that this is even a thing. That everything you just told me is even a situation is fucked. Beyond belief.
I know.
Beyond belief.
It's brainwashing. It is.
Now people in families, and I won't get into details, but even I have this in some situations. People in families sometimes just internally disconnect from a family member. If there's a destructive family member, somebody who you just cannot coexist with, and it's unhealthy to be around them, this connection is an option in life. It happens. There's that relative you don't talk to. But
yeah, sure.
But often is the times that the argument, the complaint, the destructive complication making people disconnect in Scientology is simply you're not practicing Scientology, which is just, well, I said earlier, it's pretty fucked. The thing about your wife not wanting to not be a Scientologist, but having to not be because she's married to you, you said you don't agree with it. So in your opinion, Aaron, what do you think about independent Scientology studying, or people who stay in Scientology regardless, not having a conflict of any kind?
I understood the first part of the question. I feel like I missed the second part of the question.
All right, well, a lot of times people...
Independent Scientology, and then the last part I didn't quite understand.
All right, well, there are people who stay, versus even within Scientology, say people who are still practicing Scientology, happily doing so without any conflict. Do you think...
Sure.
Do you see the benefit of that? Do you think that's still an okay thing, or are you looking at that kind of cross-eyed?
Well, so I don't object to that. So, like, even though I have zero interest in participating in independent Scientology, and I never will, and I will never get auditing again, and any of that stuff, I don't have a problem with people practicing independent Scientology. People who happen to be in Scientology, and let's say they simply have not been exposed to the same kind of abuses that others have been, right? Or maybe to a little degree, but they don't have any reason to turn their life upside down and leave Scientology today. I don't have a problem with those people. My feeling is that something does not have to be true in order to be helpful. Yeah. And I don't believe in God, but I'm not going to tell Christians they shouldn't believe in God, because if that helps them, and it's not my place to say otherwise. And the truth is, Scientology, even though I no longer believe in the ultimate story and promise of Scientology, body thinking, OT levels, all that shit, the lower levels of Scientology auditing are, I think, I don't mind saying this even though I get heat for it, undeniably therapeutic. Like, you're not asking it's basically just talk therapy. I mean, it's basically not much dissimilar if you were just go see a therapist and talk stuff out. Where auditing gets destructive, it's when it's being used as a tool against the person as opposed to a tool to help the person. I mean, and when I talk about something not having to be true in order to be helpful, look, the placebo effect is real. Yeah. You can cure disease with sugar pills, okay? So, now, one thing I would like to do personally is sit down with an expert like Steve Hassan and have him give me his best pitch for why auditing is at all times and in every instance is destructive. Because it's not that I'm defending it in an ideological way. Like, if someone thinks auditing is always hypnotic and always destructive, I'm not bothered by that. It just doesn't happen to be my view. You're just talking about things like communication and problems and change. It's not a big deal. If it didn't cost so much money, I don't think people would bitch about it so much.
Right. Well, that's exactly right.
It's when you start talking about Dianetics auditing and going into past lives and imagining incidents that happened to you, and then going into solar systems and galaxies, and you were, and Scientologists are, on a gradual basis, trained to believe that any minor thought that you have about things like that anyone else would just call imagination, is actually a memory. And I think that is a real mind altering belief. Yeah. Any random thought you have about anything is a memory that you're contacting, and that's just being out of touch with reality. So, the original question was independent Scientology. Look, my mom is an independent Scientologist. My mom audits people for a living outside of Scientology, and she and I have conversations about this. Yeah. Like, look, you gotta tell me if you really believe this body Satan stuff. And her answers to me are very similar to what I heard Leah Remini tell Joe Rogan on his podcast this week. You don't have to believe it, and sometimes, like when someone's starting the OT levels and they're learning about the body Satans and Xenu and all this stuff, they're told, and I never knew this because I never did the OT levels in Scientology, they're told you don't have to believe it, you just have to audit it. And then it becomes this weird self-inflicted brainwashing scenario where you're now given the job of auditing yourself on something, but as the auditor, you're the one responsible for the results in yourself, and as the pre-clear is someone who's getting auditing, as the pre-clear, you already know that if this doesn't work on you, it means there's something wrong with you. So you're now being put in a position of brainwashing yourself. So my mom does not audit people on the OT levels in the independent field. She just audits people on the other auditing that tends to just get people to examine parts of their life. And like I said, when I say things like this in my YouTube videos that, the lower levels of Scientology are perfectly fine in my opinion, I get a lot of heat. Like, I hope one day you'll realize you've never been helped in any way, and I hope you realize anything you've got out of Scientology you could have gotten elsewhere. And I'm like, well, maybe that's true, but why do you care so much that I feel that I think that way? Like, what's wrong with me just being like, it wasn't all bad? Like, why does it have to all be bad in order to have this honest conversation?
Right? Well,
just because I'm saying it's not all bad doesn't mean I'm advocating for it. Like, geez, like, what's the problem?
I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth here for a second. I'm just gonna go ahead and telegraph that. But I'm gonna both give an opinion on what you just said, but I'm also going to kind of back it up a little bit on the tail end of it. Basically, I feel like you nailed it with the money thing. Like, okay, so fine, it's like therapy, but you're spending twice the amount as you'd spend at a real therapist. But I feel like it's unhealthy because you're just convincing yourself that this thing's helping you when your problem is you're not helping yourself properly. And I think you can get that through real counseling. The other side of it is also a lot of what you discover through auditing. I feel like you could. Now I'm talking through very little experience on my own, just what I read and stuff. But it feels like what you can get out of auditing, I could just go to the bar with Aaron and talk to you about my problems, and we'll just figure it out in like over a couple drinks. You know what I mean? It feels like there's nothing that somebody couldn't help you with, just being a friendly ear to bend.
Yeah.
On top of that, but to your point, what actually really matches your point, Aaron, is, you know, I believe in God. Like, I don't know if God's a man in a big throne in the sky that lets you into pearly gates. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I feel like there's a higher power. But atheists bug me when they go fighting the Pledge of Allegiance because God did it. You know, under God, it bugs the shit out of them. And I'm going, all right, well, if someone gets something out of the idea that there's a God, right? You don't understand this whole thing with God. You don't subscribe to a whole belief and worship of this God, but it doesn't do anything for or against you. Why do you hate it? Like, I don't care if it said under Tinkerbell. I know Tinkerbell's not real. It wouldn't bother me. I think it's strange as hell. So I kind of see both sides of it.
Yeah. And realize that my experience in Scientology is through a very specific and unique lens. I almost never paid $1 for anything I ever did in Scientology. I never, the whole time I was on staff and in the Sea Org, I would routinely ask myself, if I ever left the Sea Org, would I actually take the time out of my day and the dollars out of my pocket to pay for these services and come in here and do them? Because I don't think I would.
Right. Right.
And so and in my experience, a lot of the auditing that I've seen happen is two students can sign up for a course and they can audit each other all day, all they want, for essentially free. So when you say it's no different than two people talking at a bar, you're probably right, except not everybody has that friend who's a great listener they can talk to at the bar.
True.
And if auditing were free, I would just chalk it up as another way that someone could go about trying to help someone in some way. Like, I don't see it as destructive necessarily. Okay, so that was in response to your question about independent Scientology. So the thing about independent Scientology is there's people in independent Scientology who act like they're in this exact same kind of cult that they were in when they were in Scientology. You know, they think there's only one truth. There's only one way to pursue that truth. There's only one correct way to ever, you know, do auditing. And these people fight amongst each other to the same degree that they were fighting amongst themselves in the church. And it makes me sick. It really makes me embarrassed for them. But there's plenty of people in the independent field who are just like, I'm me, I'm going to do my thing, and I don't really care. You know, we're not trying to, you know, some of those guys are trying to reorganize into a new organization. I think that's ridiculous.
Are you talking about, David, I think Tony Ortega said it was LaCroix, I say LaCroix. Are you talking about that one?
No. I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm actually thinking of something different.
Okay.
Like, they're trying to create a new independent Scientology organization. Now, God bless them, go for it. I just think it's misguided. It's my opinion. So, but what I don't begrudge them is their desire to keep trying to help themselves and help other people with Scientology. Because if the organization of Scientology had not developed over the last 50 years in the way that it did, where it has become a tool of oppression and a tool of control, and it's become much more like North Korea than hippie philosophy. Like, Scientology in its early days was treated like a hippie kind of philosophy. And that's not harmful. And I don't think it was harmful in those early days. Now, that doesn't mean LRH wasn't doing harmful things to people in the early days, because I'm sure he was. But I'm just saying, any subject can be used or applied in any way. And I think it is possible to apply Scientology in a helpful way, even though I just personally am not interested in that, you know? And so, you know, people who are in the church and are still in, I guess I sort of explain it by saying they just haven't had their come to Jesus moment where they had to choose between their family or Scientology yet, you know? I don't think everyone who's in there is like a diehard fundamentalist Scientologist. I think some of them just haven't been pushed to the limit yet. And maybe some of them never will be pushed to the limit. Like, my push to the limit was when I was told, you have to never see or talk to your mother again. And even then I lied about it for about a year to just continue to stay in. And it's not even because I cared about staying in Scientology. It's because I cared about keeping my job, keeping my friends, and my wife keeping her family. Do you know what I mean? So
Right.
if I was in that situation where I had to lie about it for a year just to hold on to the things I felt were important in life, then I have to assume there's many of the people in that same situation. And I have to assume there's other people who simply haven't been pushed to that limit yet, where they've had to make that choice. They haven't had to either start lying about it or jump ship. And so, I don't really blame any of those guys for what they're doing.
So you could have potentially still been a Scientologist today if they didn't push you to that limit.
I would, without question, still be a Scientologist today if they didn't push me to the top limit.
Wow.
Not because I cared about Scientology as a subject, but because I valued everything that I had in my life. You know what I mean? I thought I had the best job I was ever going to have. I thought I had the best friends I was ever going to have. No one ever wants to get rid of that,
Right, absolutely. Are you glad you got pushed to the limit now? Are you happy about that you're out?
I'm very happy.
Good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Now,
and that's actually because the transition worked out so well for me. Is really what motivated me to start doing the YouTube channel and talking about life after Scientology and talking about Scientology in a very sober, analytical way. Because most of the stories that the media focuses on regarding Scientology is how leaving Scientology destroys your life. The people get up there and they tell stories about, let me tell you how my life got destroyed when I left Scientology. But my life didn't get destroyed when I left Scientology. I was not wealthy before I left Scientology, and now I am. I had friends that were spying on me when I was in Scientology, and now I don't.
Right.
And there's many ways that my life is better now, and that's why I said, you know what? Wouldn't it be helpful to sort of tell stories of people who left Scientology? They might have been, kicked out the door, kicking and screaming, like, no, you shouldn't kick me out. But once they left, life turned out great. Those are the stories that really should be being told. Because if all you do is tell stories about how people left Scientology and the life got destroyed, then you're not
why leave?
Yeah. Scientology.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that. Do you have anybody left behind at all? It looks like your other than in-laws, your family's intact. Were there any friends or anybody you got disconnected from that you're sorry you had to lose, that you wish you didn't lose?
Oh, without question. I had a really, really, I've always had a really strong circle of friends. And I can think of 4 of my best friends right off the top of my head. 2 of which, this is crazy. So this one guy, I'll name him, Rafi Pendry. Rafi, I was the best man at his wedding, and my wife was the maid of honor at his wedding. These guys, they were there for the birth of all of our children. He and his wife disconnected from us without so much as a text message, an email, or a phone call. They just decided, once the church told them, the church probably pulled them in and said, this is what Aaron's doing, and he's such an evil person. He just right there said, okay, good, no problem, I'll never see or talk to him ever again. So he unfriended me on Facebook, blocked me on Facebook, whatever, who cares? But my point is, he went from being my best friend, who was there for the birth of all my children, and I was the best man in his wedding, to being like, I will never see, speak, or hear from Aaron Smith-Levin for the rest of my life, and I don't give a shit. And I'm not even going to bother calling him to say, you fucked up, bro. I'm not talking to you anymore. You know what I mean? Like, that didn't even occur.
You got a letter, right?
No, nothing.
You didn't get the disconnection letter?
No, nothing.
Oh, wow. That's like typical, right? That's usually what you get.
Well, I think they're cutting back on that. I think they're just saying, hey, look, if you send them a disconnection letter, they're going to post it on the internet, so don't even do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, your question was, any of the people I left behind, or all the friends that I had, I felt were very, very, very good friends up until the day when people disconnect from you because Scientology says you're not a good person, it just really drives it home that you sort of have to look like, were we friends? And, like, if the crux of our friendship was that we were Scientologists, then were we friends the way friends are friends? Or were we friends because it was a convenient association? Like, and if you look back on it and you start to look at these relationships and think, well, then I guess we weren't really friends then it's hard to be super regretful that they're not in your life anymore. But the fact is, there were a lot of people that were in my life on a daily basis that, if I could, have it my way, I'd be like, yeah, I'd like to have them be my friends again. But it certainly isn't something that's going to get me where I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm never going to see or speak to my mother ever again because I value your friendship more. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, let me ask you about that. And I don't mean to put you on the spot on this, but like people like yourself and your wife and your mom, you guys are going to stay connected. You guys are going to make that decision. Do you think there's a certain aspect of someone's personality or a certain way that somebody is that some people just are more susceptible to say, see ya, as opposed to, no, I can't disconnect from these people?
It's hard to say because let me remind everyone that it's not like the ethics officer came to me and said, you need to make this decision, and I was like, nope. I mean, I lied my ass off for a year, right? And then even after I was lying about it for a year, it's not like I just went into the ethics officer and said, I'm really tired of lying. I just want you to tell you can shove it and you can declare me. No. It was a gradual process. I was fighting very, very hard to not get kicked out of the church. And it really came to the point where they just couldn't, they just weren't willing to put up with my bullshit anymore. And they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure you're not telling us the truth, so we're done with you. And that was not a good day. That was not a good day.
Right.
When you say, is there a difference in, could someone else be predisposed to making that decision? Could someone else who was in my position, I did have a moment where I was given the opportunity to bend at the knee and come clean and make amends and, get back in the good graces. So if what you're really asking is like, could someone else at that point have been like, okay, fine, you got me. I give in. I'll come back. Yeah. And I think the difference between someone who would bend at the knee at that point and someone who wouldn't, I think it depends on whether they still believe in the story of Scientology. If you still believe that we are trapped on a prison planet in a continuous state of amnesia without realizing that we are trapped in these bodies and trapped on this earth and that we are being controlled by the evil alien psychiatrists on a daily basis, it is very easy, if you believe in that story, to set aside any normal terrestrial concerns, any terrestrial desires like seeing your mother.
Right.
Be like, okay, I'm gonna put this off to the side right now because I'm dedicated to the purpose of freeing every being on this planet. If you still believe the bullshit, you're gonna pick the church over your family. And by that time, I no longer believe the bullshit. So.
Well, that's interesting because I feel like that the idea, and you hear the word indoctrinated come up a lot with Scientology, but it seems like the idea of disconnection is almost implanted from the first day you walk in there. Think about how you guys, like many people, came in as kids. You and your brother, at least, came in as children. And when you come in as children, the first thing they do is put you in your own place to live aside from your parents. So it's almost like a pre-disconnection kind of, sort of, isn't it?
But that's not just coming into Scientology, though. That was very, very specific and kind of unique, where we had joined staff at the Philadelphia org. But for a while, we're still just all living at home, and my mom's husband is a chiropractor, and we do homeschool for a few hours in the morning, and then we go into the org. So for a while, it was just kind of normal life, except you're going into the org studying. It was when we went from Philadelphia to Clearwater, Florida, to study at FLAG, the Flag Service Organization, that we were living with the Sea Org members. And Sea Org members Sea Org members separate the genders in the apartments. So I'm just making it clear. It's not like just getting into Scientology is when they start having you not live with your parents. We were basically living on a Sea Org base, and that's why that was happening. But I still agree with your point that they still do set it up. They still do the indoctrination that would result in someone being willing to disconnect from family. It does start from day one, because every course in Scientology starts with a policy letter called Keeping Scientology Working, and that policy letter is where L. Ron Hubbard lays out in no uncertain terms how Scientology is single-handedly the most important thing anyone could possibly be doing with their lives in the universe. And this is the only chance we have to make it, and we only have a brief moment in eternity where we possibly have a chance to set man free. And it might be too late, but we're going to give it our best, and nothing could be more important. I mean, that policy letter, that policy letter is the first thing you read in every single course in Scientology. And that indoctrination that nothing is more important, nothing is more important, nothing is more important. It's that indoctrination combined with the overall story of Scientology that does put someone in a state of mind where they're willing to just discard their family without much remorse.
Now, just to get inside your head a little bit as a Scientologist, while you're actively being a Scientologist, and you understand the auditing process because you did auditing, you were an auditor.
Yep.
Something I wanted to know is, like, you were aware the Scientology labeled enemies, right? You had enemies that were known to you to be the enemy.
Okay, so let's be specific. That Scientology labels enemies. Do you just mean declaring people suppressive?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if someone's suppressive, they're almost someone you can't help. You just avoid them because they're destructive and they're going to be a distraction from the goal of clearing the planet.
True.
Now, does it ever occur to you during this time, Mr. Levin Smith, does it ever occur to you during this time that you can't clear the whole planet if you're labeling people suppressive and giving up with them?
Yes, but they define clear the planet in a very specific way that does not literally mean clearing everybody on the planet.
Ah, okay. So what is the mentality? What is the thought process of a suppressive person? Are they doomed to burn in eternity on Earth?
No, LRH says that we have the tools to help suppressive people. We just can't be bothered, so we'll get around to them last when we're finished.
Oh, what's going to happen is a back sweep. Okay.
And keep in mind, Scientology doesn't believe in a heaven or a hell. And so Scientology's version of hell is simply you will not be allowed to avail yourself of Scientology, and you will die death after death, lifetime after lifetime, without the ability to recall and continue to be stuck in a body. That is Scientology's version of what someone would call a hell, because they don't believe in an afterlife. They believe in an eternal life, right?
Right.
Do you want me to tell you how Scientologists define clearing the planet?
I actually, you know what? That would be good. Let's go ahead and cover that.
Okay.
All right, so we'll cover that next Friday. No cliffhanger. Aaron Smith-Levin. Don't know why I call him Levin Smith. Keep getting them mixed up, two last names. But next week, Aaron, for the full hour, we'll talk about a little bit more about his brother, about clearing the planet, about some of the crazy beliefs about L. Ron Hubbard as the science fiction writer that he is, and 10 questions, so much more to cover next week. Special announcement in 2 weeks. I'll be talking to Mary Kahn. You might have seen her on Scientology Aftermath. She was a blast to talk to, and we have a good conversation there. So please tune in for that. So next week, again, part 2 of Aaron Smith-Levin. Make sure you tune in for it. And that about sums it up. Stay connected and take care, everybody.
You have been listening to Come Get Some Extra on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, and many other streaming services where available. As always, stay connected. And that about sums it up.